Well, hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the New News Podcast. It's myself, Andrew Sandy, and we're joined by an awesome guest today. Most of you should know him already, Trevor Rosenthal. He's pitched 8 major league seasons. He's been an all-star, 132 career saves, and is the single season leader of saves for the Cardinals. And he's just an awesome guy, awesome pitcher. This is the 10-year anniversary of the 2013 World Series team, which he was a major part of as well. And so, Trevor, thanks for hopping on, man. How are you doing?
Yeah, man. Thanks, guys. I'm excited to be here. Doing really well. The Newt News podcast. I love the name. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of excitement around the player Newt Bar and all the things related to him this year. But yeah, like we've talked about, I appreciate you guys putting out this content. I know Cardinal fans are really appreciative of getting to engage in any sort of way with the news of everything that's going on. So I'm happy to be a part of that and contribute in any way I can. So
thanks, man. We really appreciate you coming on. We'd love to know a little bit, how is your recovery going? You had surgery this past season, and what are your plans looking like for getting back into pitching in 2024?
Yeah, the recovery is going really well. I had Tommy John surgery in June of this year. Targeting a 12-month turnaround, so be ready to return to competition in June of 2024. So about midway through the season, I'm feeling really good. It's amazing what modern medicine can do, and specifically with the procedure, Tommy John ulnar collateral ligament replacement. It's actually the second time I've had it, so that is. It's actually kind of a positive because I more or less know what to expect and kind of understand the process. And I know that the likelihood of me having a successful outcome is relatively high. So just being patient, but doing really well and excited to be back in action and hopefully contribute to a team at the major league level in the upcoming season.
Yeah, that's really cool. Hopefully we'll see you back on the field at next season. Really excited for that. So we talk Cardinals baseball on this podcast all the time. I know you're part of the organization not too long ago. So could you give us some of your quick thoughts on how this past season went in St. Louis and like where things went wrong and how you think the Cardinals could bounce back in 2024?
Yeah, that's something I'm sure everybody's kind of scratching their heads and wondering, and it's inevitable. I mean, there's the ebbs and flows, and in St. Louis, we get accustomed to the winning culture and high expectations, and I know the front office is one that has always really gone after creating a really good product for the fan base and a product that can go out on the field and win games. And we've seen that with a lot of the key acquisitions. I mean, just top looking at the Wilson Contreras recently, and the Goldschmidt and Arenado. I mean, some really big pieces that you would expect to have a positive outcome. And talking about pitching, I mean, that's the one thing that can be a challenge, and pitching is always in demand. I've experienced that firsthand, going through injuries and coming back. Always been surprised at how eager teams were or have been to get me back on the field, and that's because pitching is such an important piece of the puzzle, and I think that's something that St. Louis had struggled with over the past few seasons, and finding out that it's not easy to replicate that past success or easy to reproduce that talent at that level. Talking about the 2013 team, the 10-year reunion, that team had a ton of homegrown talent and exceptional talent, guys that are still kicking around in the league today. And that's somewhat uncommon. So the dynamic of developing pitching, the dynamic of pitchers getting into the league and staying into the league and having success, all that has changed quite dramatically over the past 5 years due to the analytics and those different aspects. But I think, for the Cardinals, they have a good, strong foundation. And one thing I didn't talk about is just the transition as well, right? You got guys like a little bit of changing of guard with Adam Wainwright and Yadier Molina and even Albert Pujols. I mean, so many key pieces that have been there for the last 20 years, it's not easy to take those guys out and expect things to keep running as they were.
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned Yachty there. So a lot of Cardinals fans thought a huge reason for the failure in 2023 was just not having him behind the plate for the first time in basically forever. Like most of our baseball lives as fans, we'd never seen anything else. What was it like pitching to Yachty versus pitching to other catchers? I mean, we know that he's a generational great, but can you give us any insight into that?
Yeah, we all know how great Yachty is, and it's hard to really quantify the impact that he has on a team and on the season and being on a roster. But it became a little bit more apparent with his absence, and working with him as a pitcher is really unlike anything else. I mean, I've actually had great experiences with other catchers at the major league level, but there's just there's really just a difference with a Hall of Fame caliber type of player, because their impact is not directly correlated to just the skills or the competitiveness that they have on the field. There's almost this aura that surrounds them, and it's impacting every single guy, whether they know it or not. It's almost, you feel this aura and this presence of like, I need to elevate my game to keep up with what this guy is bringing to the table. And like I said, that's so hard to quantify and to really understand until you lose that. And it's not to say that it can't be picked up and it can't be replaced at some point, but it takes a little bit of time. And I think this year was a really good example of how his presence, his absence and his non-presence was really felt throughout the season.
Yeah, that's really, really good to hear. I think there's rumors that he's going to come back as a coach, so I'd love to see him calling pitches in the dugout. So one thing we wanted to hit on, you were an all-star at one point, and we just wanted to know about like how that experience was like. I think in 2015 the Cardinals had several all-stars. So how was the all-star game experience like? Did you get into the game, and what was it like being surrounded by all of those like top-tier players?
Yeah, the all-star game, I think for any player, it's almost a highlight because you're getting recognized with the top talent and the top players in the game, and it's really surreal. And to be in a locker room, fortunately, we did have a lot of other Cardinal players, so I wasn't the only one. I had some guys that I knew and could talk to right away, but just being in that locker room, being on the field, and seeing all these other guys that you look up to across the league, and you see their highlights on SportsCenter every single night. And then to understand, like, okay, I'm on the same playing field. Like I've been recognized as an equal contributor as these guys are. And I would say for me is definitely a highlight of my career, and something that, I had a conversation. Matt Holliday was a good friend of mine. He was an all-star that year as well. And we were talking and going into that game, and he said something. He's like, you made it. You're an all-star. And that's something that no one can ever take away from you. Like that's an accolade that you achieved, and you did the work and you made the sacrifices to get here. And that's something that it really means a lot. And I think every player feels that same way, as as inconvenient as it can be. I mean, you really look forward to the all-star break and finally having a couple of days off where you can rest. Like, man, I got to go and travel and show up and do all these things that are associated with that event. But it's something that I hope every player gets the chance to experience at some point in their career.
Yeah. Well, speaking of being surrounded by great players, 2013 is just an iconic Cardinal team at this point. You talk about young, homegrown players. You had star veterans on that team as well. And that was, I think, your second big league season at that point, 2013 as well. So early on in your career, already on this incredible team. At what point in the 2013 season did you know this team could be in a World Series, had what it took to compete? And if it wasn't for David Ortiz going nuts, he'd probably win the World Series too.
Yeah. It was the thing I remember most about that season, aside from the strong pitching performances and all the young talent that we had, was, there was a point maybe 50 games into the season where, out in the bullpen, we have a lot of conversations. We all think of ourselves as playing the general manager at some point. We just have that bird's eye view, and we have a lot of time to sit back and evaluate the decisions that are being made. But we started to realize about 50 games in that I think we had won every single series up to that point. And you start to have this expectation of, okay, I'm showing up today to the field. We're probably going to win. There's a good chance we're going to win today. And if for some reason we don't win today, like, we're for sure winning tomorrow. And that feeling is pretty crazy. It's a good feeling to have. And it was right around that time when we're looking at our record, we're looking at how many games we're winning. It's like, man, we're on track to win 100 games. And, you win 100 games, you have a good chance of going deep into the postseason. And at that point, once we got to the postseason, we were right there. I think the Red Sox maybe had a little bit better record than us, but, one of the best records in baseball. And really the expectation at that point becomes to seal the deal and finish it off. And I would say that was probably one of the hardest things is, we talk about going to the World Series, playing in the World Series. That's every player's goal when the season starts out. But losing the World Series is one of the worst things. It's really like, man, like, we got this far. We were so close. And it just didn't happen. But that's part of it. Someone's got to win. Someone's got to lose. And I think, like, we were talking about pitching and recent struggles, and that's something that I've seen in the game over the last 5 years. Is this really drastic transition into coaching staffs, particularly on the pitching side, using analytics, using these advanced tools to, not just make scouting reports, but to help pitchers sharpen their craft. And when I was coming up with guys like Michael Wacha, Carlos Martinez, Joe Kelly, Shelby Miller, like all these really great pitchers, even the Lance Lynn's, and go back, Chris Carpenter, and guys like Adam Wainwright, Jaime Garcia. These things, those were not things that we were being taught or talked about. And I would say a lot more of the talent development was really organic, or more high level and more just approach based, to where now it seems that the coaching tools, the development tools, the instruction tools are much more prominent in the teams and organizations that have a little bit better structure in place. I feel are the ones that are benefiting right now. And so I haven't been in the Cardinals organization, obviously, in the last 5 years. But for me, that's something definitely to be aware of. And if I was higher up in the chain of command, and you're always looking to bring guys in, and that's something that the Cardinals have done. They have a strong core base of coaches that are passionate about the game and help with that development process. And those are the guys you want, and you don't want to replace those. But at the same time, we want to keep up with the trends, and we want to keep up with all of the changes that we're seeing in other areas.
Yeah. So
you mentioned.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, you mentioned like pitching in the World Series. Is there any extra preparation that goes into stuff like that? I mean, is it different than your preparation for the regular season?
It is. It's different in the aspect that you're gonna be a little bit more excited. And I remember we had a lot of veterans on the team and guys that had played in games like that previously, especially in 2013. That team had guys on the roster that just won the World Series the previous year. So they had kind of been there and done that. And before each series and before a lot of the games, they would sit down and call a meeting, and they kept communicating the importance of not getting too excited. And the best way they said that they were communicating and how to handle those situations was to enjoy it. And that's a message that has been passed down from veterans to, rookie players throughout the years. And it's really a hard one to grasp, but the players that are able to not make the moment too big and really just do the thing that they've been doing for the past 180 days, however many days it is. I mean, you've been playing a game every day. You're you're as prepared as you can possibly be physically. It's more of the mental side of not making the situation bigger than it really is, and trying to use that excitement and adrenaline to your advantage.
Absolutely. We hear all the time about guys in the postseason not shaving or not washing a pair of socks. Were there any superstitions that you had during that 2013 run, and then anything else on the club that was really funny?
Gosh, yeah. I mean, I'm not a particularly superstitious person. I do like to have a routine and do a lot of the same things. But there were so many fun guys on that team, especially out in the bullpen. We were just a young group of kids that really had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. And I think that took a lot of the pressure off to begin with. But one of my favorite teammates of all time was Joe Kelly. You know, since then, he's definitely made a name for himself and all the antics that he brings along with the game. But we had a lot of fun. We had, you know, handshake before we did every game. We had a routine that we did during the game. We would drink a cup of coffee at a certain time. We would we had a stretching routine that we were all doing together, and it was quite comical. But those are some of the, you know, the best memories. And obviously everything is a great memory when you're winning games and having success. But I had, you know, looking back now, it's no surprise to me that a lot of those guys have gone on to have great careers. And then, you know, in particular with Joe Kelly and all the notoriety he's had for the stunts that he does and his personality, looking back at those early days, it's like that's exactly who he is. He hasn't changed one bit.
Yeah, so you pitched a lot of high leverage in that World Series. You recorded a save in Game 2, which was really exciting. But I wanted to hit on Game 3, where you were the winning pitcher, because I was actually at Game 3 and like watching, and it was crazy finish. So what was it like to pitch in the 9th inning of a tie game in the World Series? And then what was it like when Sandy's favorite player of all time, Alan Craig, tripped around the bases, and then you walked off in such a crazy way?
Oh man. Well, okay. To start pitching the 9th inning, and you know, that was another highlight, I think. I mean, there's not a lot of guys that get to experience that moment, and it's really fun to look back at the video and to see, you know, my teammates in the dugout and everybody kind of looking on, and to see how big of a moment that was. It honestly didn't feel like a big moment when I was out there. It was like any other game. I was just going out and doing my job, and it was really, really cold. I remember that. So it was like, okay, I want to come in, do my job, and get out of here so we can go home. I've been freezing my tail off in the bullpen all night long, back when the games were actually much longer than they are now. But, yeah, then going to Game 3, coming in, and I think had runners on. I ended up giving up a run to tie the game. And then the situation played out where I can't remember. It was a ground ball maybe, and something happened where Craig got tangled up with Middlebrooks at third base and ended up scoring. And I just remember he scored, and the play was crazy. I think the baseballs were kind of like flying everywhere. People were falling down, and umpires were making calls. We weren't sure what was going on, but we were pretty sure that he scored, and we had just won the game. So everybody's running out in the field. Craig is kind of still laying on the ground. It seemed like he might have re-injured his ankle. And I remember we just was all running out on the field, and we're like excited, kind of confused, wondering what was going on. The stadium's going crazy, as St. Louis always does. But that was being early in my career and being in those types of moments, and those Cardinal teams where we were so dominant and winning games. I mean, winning was just always the expectation. And I just remember being on the field in that situation, and not just because we were confused, but always because we had such a confidence. It was like, okay, no matter what happens here, like we're probably going to win this game. So I don't know, definitely a wild moment in Cardinal history.
Yeah. I forget too, I was watching that back the other day, that Yachty got thrown out at the plate. And then the throw came back to third, and that's why Craig went home too. So like in a span of 10 seconds, you had two guys get thrown out at the plate, and then interference. It has to be one of the craziest endings to a World Series game of all time. So that's nuts. You mentioned,
it was a crazy play by Pedroia, right?
Yeah.
Infield in, and kind of like he made a diving play, made an insane throw home.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, yeah, a lot of stuff happened right there in that short couple throws.
Mm-hmm. it was just an odd World Series all around. Yeah. Anyways, I don't want to bring up the pick off at first. That's just going to make me cry. So but you mentioned there's a lot of young arms on that team who've gone on to have long careers in different places. And something I've always found interesting is that at different points it was talked about stretching you out as a starter and seeing what the future would look like in that end. Do you have any regrets about not really having much of an opportunity at the major league level to be a starting pitcher, or were you pretty content with being in a relief pitch role?
I'm definitely content with, the opportunities I had. I had a lot of success and really reaped the rewards from all those opportunities I was given. But it was something where that was something that I expressed that I had interest in and really wanted to have a shot at it. Unfortunately, it was just not my decision at the end of the day. And I think, the powers that be had a plan of where they wanted to put players and the roster construction that they saw best fit for the winning team. And so I fell into that relief role, and we joked around. A lot of the veteran players out in the bullpen, a lot of the veteran pitchers, guys like Jason Mott and Mitchell Boggs were basically telling me, well, if you don't want to be in the bullpen, well, then you got to stop doing so good. You can't come out here and keep dominating because they're going to keep you out here. So I guess I might be to blame in some regard. But no, I definitely would think that I will say I wish I could have had that opportunity. It was something that I had wanted and something that I had experience in the minor leagues. So I just assumed once I got to the major leagues, I was going to have a chance to continue on that path. But there's no regrets. I mean, like I said, there was a ton of really tremendous opportunity that I had early in my career to be in the role that I had, and I benefited greatly from that.
Yeah, so going back even further, we just talked about you potentially being a starter, but when you were in college, you played shortstop. And for our listeners, they know that I like two-way players and pitchers who hit. So were there any considerations of you playing shortstop or being a two-way player in the minor leagues? And if you weren't, then what happened? Or like, what's the rationale for dropping hitting?
Yeah. Well, the quick answer would be I just wasn't good enough at hitting and too good at pitching. I basically threw the ball too hard. But no, I went to 1 year of junior college at Cowley County Community College. I came in as a third baseman. Midway through the fall season, I made a transition to shortstop. I played shortstop for our team in the spring. And I was approached at one point after my pitching debut. My coaches expressed that there was a lot of interest in me pitching because of my velocity. And I remember when we sat down to have that discussion, they said, hey, what do you think about pitching more and transitioning out of the shortstop role? I told them, I was like, no way. Like, I don't like pitching. Pitching is so boring. Like, playing shortstop is the most fun position on the field. And that carried into my minor league days as well. When I got into my low A season in Davenport, Iowa, we had a 6-man rotation, and I was calling the farm director in between my outings, basically telling him the same thing. Like, I am so bored having to sit here for 5 games and not play and only getting to play every 6th day. Can I DH? Can I play first base? Can I do something in between my start days? And obviously the answer was no. But no, I think that's something for me that's always been there. I just enjoy the game, and I like being a part of every play. And as a pitcher, that's something that you miss out on. You have to sit there and watch, and especially being in the bullpen, it's like, man, I get to go out there and perform for 5 minutes on a good day. Like, that's best case scenario. I get 5 minutes of time on the field. So it's a change in how you have to approach the game and your contribution. But maybe there is a comeback in there. Maybe we have a Rick Ankiel story in the making. Who knows?
Yeah, so I was looking at your major league hitting stats, and it looks like you got 4 plate appearances in your major league career, and you struck out all 4 times. So do you have those memories, but can you tell us what it was like to face major league pitching?
Well, I'll preface those stats by saying every time that I was allowed to go to the plate, the manager, I think it was Mike Matheny, every time he said, hey, whatever you do, don't swing the bat. So I was given strict instructions on not to swing. I think I would eventually take a hack if I got 2 strikes on me or whatnot. I'm like, okay, I'm not going down without a swing. But I remember stepping up to the plate every single time and thinking, oh my gosh, like the pitcher is so much closer than what it looks like when I'm pitching. Like he's on top of you, and just thinking, like, how do guys hit? Like this is incredibly hard. But in all of those instances, it was really the one time where I'm on the field, on the major league field, and the expectation, I'm not expected to contribute in a positive way. So I tried to take those moments in and kind of have fun with it and kind of look around and take it all in. Like, okay, I'm on a Major League Baseball field. This is something I dreamed about since I was a little kid. And I don't have to focus like I do on the mound. So I'm just going to stand up here and kind of have fun and see what it's like and pretend I'm a much better hitter than what I showed to be.
Well, Andrew, next time, remember the take sign was on, okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
What is that about?
That is absolutely awesome. We're going to shift gears just a little bit. You did a series on Twitter, or I guess X as it's called these days, that a lot of us enjoyed, where you like rated a bunch of bullpens. And like, I thought it was really fun. I followed that. But like, all jokes aside, how important is it to players to be in an environment where they have state-of-the-art facilities and all their needs are met? The amenities are very nice. Like, how much does that matter to people, especially when they're picking a new destination?
That's a tough question to answer. I think for a lot of players, it's definitely a factor. I mean, when you're talking about free agency and guys deciding destinations, I wouldn't say that's at the top of their list of things they're looking at. But it factors in. And I think why it factors in is it shows the support that you have from ownership groups. And when a team is trying to recruit you and bring you in and show you why you should choose them or why you should come and play there, you can see by how they're treating the players and the amenities and the different resources that are available, by how invested they are and how interested they are in really providing the best opportunity to win. And I think those little things like just what if it's the tidiness, if it's the food, the attendance, just the culture, I think in general, I think that speaks more to potential free agents than anything. But as players, I mean, we're kind of wired to make the most of whatever the situation is, especially coming up to the minor leagues. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of dynamics that are not predictable, and you get used to that. And you have a job to do. And no matter what the situation is, I played, in Oakland in 2021, and that was a team that I was so impressed with. I mean, you're talking about a stadium and an ownership group that didn't seem as invested into the team and providing the best resources compared to other organizations across the league. But the players, you would never know. I mean, these guys were showing up every day with a positive attitude and really had a lot of star talent that has since moved into different teams since 2021. But I don't think that it is as much as professional athletes can be divas or high maintenance, however you want to view it. Those little things don't necessarily impact the performance as much as you might think. They're definitely nice to have, and you get used to it, and it's great to have as many resources as possible. But I think it just speaks more about the culture with every organization and how invested those teams are to providing the best experience.
Man, that's so interesting, because I think for me, like, I always assumed it was such a big deal because fan experience obviously matters to me when I'm visiting the ballpark. And I feel that Busch has a fantastic fan experience. But I really wanted to follow up with that and just ask what you think about fan culture and how much that matters. So like being at a ballpark like Busch, where you have 40,000 people in the seats for every home game versus maybe playing somewhere where there's not as much attendance, like how much does that impact player experience as well?
Yeah, it's something that as a Cardinal player, when you come up through the Cardinal organization, you get to the major leagues, you get to St. Louis. Myself in particular, playing the first half of my career every single day in Busch Stadium, something you start to take for granted. And you think, oh, this is just baseball. I mean, this is just fan base culture everywhere. And then you quickly see that when you either travel on the road or, become part of different organizations, it's not like that everywhere. And I think St. Louis has such a great history with their support of the local sports team, in particular with baseball. And that tradition lives on today, and they continue to reap the rewards of that. And one really cool thing that we hear from visiting players is, like, St. Louis is one of their favorite places to come play. And when you ask them, why do you like to come to St. Louis to play? And they say it's because of the fans. Visiting players love to come into a stadium where there's a lot of energy. You can tell that the fans are having a good time and they're having a great experience just by the energy that's in the ballpark. And it's hard to really compare it to anything else. I mean, on the field, in the stadium, every little detail that goes into it, from the organ to the scoreboard, to just the engagement of the fan base. I mean, there's not many places, if any, that really are performing at that caliber.
Yeah, that's really awesome to hear. I know a lot of I think Wilson Contreras said that he wanted to be a Cardinal as soon as Albert Pujols hit that home run against the Cubs last year. That was pretty funny. So wanted to shift gears a little bit and ask, which hitters are the hardest for you to face, and is there a hitter that you hope to face in the future?
Oh, yeah. Historically, hitters that have had a more simple approach against me, just trying to put the ball in play, basically, stick their bat out and put it in play on the ground to the opposite field, have had more success against me. I feel that the guys who weren't able to shorten up and maybe still took their big swing, especially with my fastball, I found that those guys were a little bit easier for me to get it, work ahead in the count against and put them in a position where I could eventually get an out. I remember, especially being the NL Central, just, Ryan Braun, I mean, a tremendous talent. It was a tough time getting him out. Andrew McCutchen, another one, just had a really professional approach. Guys that they just didn't swing at pitches that weren't in the zone, and they made you work for their every single out. And those guys were tough. Going forward, guys that I would like to face, as much as I am happy when I'm looking, for example, like if I'm warming up to come in to save in the 9th inning and I see where they're at in their lineup and the 3 hitters that I'm going to have to face, if it's 7, 8, and 9, I'm pretty excited for that. Like, that's like, okay, at least I'm not getting the heart of the lineup. But there is an aspect, just like the aura that throwing to Yadier Molina has, when a guy like Miguel Cabrera or whoever's, the 2, 3, 4 superstars in the lineup for that year, that season, it does elevate your game a little bit. It's that competition that's ingrained in all of us. When you're facing the best, it kind of, you're going to have to be at your best as well. So I definitely enjoy that. I know there's a lot of great players today. Acuna, man, a lot of those, that Braves lineup, there's a lot of guys where when you're coming to Atlanta right now, you better be ready to have your A game, because they're going to make you pay if you don't.
Yeah, basically you could face 6, 7, 8 from Atlanta's lineup, and it's basically the middle of an order of any other team right now. So yikes if you have to pitch against Atlanta next year. Do you have any favorite teammates from over the years? I know that's a hard question because you don't want to include a lot of people, but.
Oh, man, I have a lot of favorite teammates. It's really cool to see all the different personalities. And I'll say, even when you go from one team, like the first time I went from the St. Louis Cardinals, the next season I was playing with the Washington Nationals, and I was a little bit nervous. So, coming into a new clubhouse, there's guys that have been there. It's like first day at a new school, you can say. But I've been really surprised, like across the board, baseball guys are always great people. There's a little bit of a fraternity where, once you're in, and you get treated really well. And it's a really strong camaraderie and bond that guys develop. but there's definitely some guys that stick out. One of my favorites of all time, being in St. Louis, was Lance Berkman. I'm not sure why. I don't know if I have an idea. I think it was just for whatever reason, I thought no matter what he said, every sentence that he said, I thought it was hilarious. I thought he was the funniest guy that I've ever played with for some reason. I don't know what it was, if it was he's actually funny or if it's just the way he talks or his personality. But I love playing with Lance. It was like every day when I show up, I can't wait to just sit around and just, listen to Lance Berkman talk about whatever he was talking about. It just was really enjoyable. But I had great mentors. I was lucky to play with and become close friends with guys like Adam Wainwright and Matt Holliday, even Chris Carpenter. I mean, some really, in my mind, nostalgic pieces and the development that I had in my career, both professionally and personally, guys that I still look up to this day.
Yeah. So you mentioned spending part of the 2019 season in Washington, and that team ended up winning the World Series. So did you get a ring from that? And do you still have it?
Yeah, I did. I did get a ring. I still have it. It's pretty cool. It's one of those like bittersweet things because I wasn't actually a contributor in the postseason for that team. I was with them for half of the regular season. But that was a team, again, playing bullpen general manager, bullpen GM during the games where we were sitting out there about that 50 game in mark, getting into the late May, early June, where I was telling the guys around me, like, hey, like I spent time in St. Louis. We had World Series teams. We had 100-win teams. And this team is way better than any of those teams. We had it all. We could go out. We could score 10 runs every night. Our starting pitching was giving us 7-8 innings every single night. And we were just doing things that aren't normal. Scoring 10 runs at the major league level is not a normal thing to do. And starters continually going deep into games wasn't a normal thing. And so I wasn't surprised. We were struggling halfway through the season and ended up winning the World Series, obviously, but that was not a surprise to me. I mean, that was one of the most talented teams that I've ever been a part of.
Wow. Yeah. When you started mentioning Washington, I was like, how did I forget he was on the 2019 Nationals at that too? So that's a cool experience to be part of that.
It was.
Something you touched on a little bit earlier about pitching development, how things have changed over the years. This is kind of like a two-parter with that, but what are some of the ways you could describe how analytics actually impact development of pitching? Because I think fans just hear like you're throwing stats out there and don't really understand how that correlates to how it impacts how you're pitching on the mound. And then second, like, is that something that would draw you to an organization? Is there use of analytics or potentially make you choose a different organization? Like, is there, I know you've been a part of a couple at this point, but like, what is your relationship to analytics in the game today? And is that something you look for in a potential team this coming year?
Yeah. I mean, the simplest way to describe like the impact that these analytical tools and processes have had is, 10 years ago when a player was coming up to the major leagues, you were more or less having to kind of figure out everything on your own. And that's still true. Like every player is responsible. Every player should be their best coach. There shouldn't be a coach that's more concerned about the success in your career than the player. The player has to process all the information that comes in and put it into play. But now with all of this new information and the ability to take these, pitching mechanics or whatever it may be, the spin on the ball and how you're executing certain pitches, and it's basically able to break it down one more level and give the player another piece of information. And there's teams that can do that a little bit better. There's teams that are able to communicate that information a little bit better. And there's teams that are able to help players implement that information a little bit better. And I wouldn't say that it would factor into my decision to go somewhere as heavily, because I know at the end of the day, I need to be the one seeking out that information and applying it myself. But I do think that we've seen organizations that have really good strategies for implementing these techniques and this information. And a few stand out. I think, the Dodgers being one of them, Houston to some extent being one of them. Brent Strom, which he's been a part of both Houston and Arizona now, and 2 organizations that have had great success. So I think, there's definitely an impact that it's having in the game. And I've seen it firsthand with organizations trying to figure it out. I've been in organizations where they're bringing people in, they're bringing in all these new tools, these analytical tools, and it's messy at times. The players, we sit in these meetings and we hear conversations around all of this information, all these analytical, I'm trying to think of another word for it, but all of these intricate, detailed statistical information, and players that, we walk out of these meetings looking at each other thinking, I'm just going to keep doing what I was doing. Like this, this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But I think if you have, and I've seen it in the opposite, I've seen guys who have really good instructors that can break down the information in a way that they are able to receive it and then apply it, and their career takes off and they end up having a lot of success because of it. The simplest way to really to describe it is you're going from being on the mound and relying 100% on your experience, what's worked for you in the past, and what you can keep doing to recreate that success, to now today, you just have another layer of tools of understanding why you were having that success and having a better understanding of how to recreate it. So that's really the simplest way I could break it down.
That's such an interesting perspective on that, to see them as complementary instead of, competing, the analytical approach and the old approach. Just one more question here. This is a little different, but what does watching baseball look like for you as a veteran of the game? And if you don't watch baseball, because I know a lot of players, aren't interested in watching because it's, their life, their job. Are there any other sports you watch or anything like that?
Yeah, I enjoy watching sports. I enjoy watching all different types of competition, and the major sports, football, basketball, baseball, hockey are all ones that I like to watch. And I do enjoy watching baseball. And I think something that I take for granted at times, or it's hard for me to recognize until I'm with a group of friends that are just casual fans, is the deeper layers of expertise that I do have in the game, and the different viewpoint that the different perspective that I bring. And I find a lot of my friends when we're watching games, they feel that I'm almost a personal commentator to what's going on and able to describe things at a little deeper level. So, I definitely think, for players, when you're doing it every single day, it can get mundane, it can get boring. But there is, you have to understand that we're getting to play a game and it is fun. And when you can shift your perspective a little bit from the mundane and how hard it is, I mean, playing the major leagues is highly rewarding, but it's a hard career. There's high expectations, there's a lot of pressure, and that can wear on guys. But no, I enjoy playing it, and if I'm not playing on the field, I hope to continue to be involved in the game in some regard or another throughout the course of my life.
Yeah, so we wanted to lastly ask you if you had any plans for your post-playing career, because I know Wayno is gonna start doing some broadcasting soon. So any plans beyond that, or are we just focused on the playing in the future?
Yeah, it's so hard to plan. I think my approach when I got into professional baseball and I signed that first contract, I basically made the decision, I'm all in. I'm going to go at this. I'm going to focus on this and this only and make the most of it until those days are over. And luckily still today, I'm still very much involved in it, but I am starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I wouldn't say I'm necessarily planning, but I am more aware of different opportunities that I might have interest in, and broadcasting definitely being one of them. Like we talked about, I mean, I'm passionate about the game. I enjoy being a part of it and communicating my experiences to fan bases and also interacting with players in some regard. But I also am passionate about investing into players. I had a ton of really strong, high character veteran players that invested into me as a young player and passed along a lot of valuable information that helped me have success throughout my career. So I hope to find a way to continue to do that, whether I'm in the clubhouse or not in the clubhouse, to continue to give back to the game in some capacity. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, it's just continuing to show up and do the best I can. And there's a lot of great opportunities that are going to be available. And that's something that I've seen with a lot of former players that I now have seen have other careers outside of baseball. Those skills that you develop in the game of leadership and communication and dedication and hard work, those translate really well to a lot of different areas of life. And that's something that I'll continue to rely on heavily.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot
that
of
all-in mindset. Just you go.
Yeah, no, we're seeing a lot of former Cardinals come back. Lance Lynn just came back to play, and Descalso, he's going to be the bench coach next year. So, any plans to come back to St. Louis?
That would be great. I did see that, and I'm excited to see how this all plays out. I did when I saw that news. I'm good friends with Oliver Marmel just as a friend, and aside from being on the field. But I sent him a message. I said, "Hey, let's get the game back together. Let's do this." So you never know. I mean, I still have a lot of time left in my rehab schedule, but pitching is always in need. And if I'm ready to go, I'd be more than happy to come spend some time in St. Louis.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back. I'd love to see you back.
That would be
uniform.
Unbelievable. Yeah, we'd love nothing
more. It would be.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
I can't imagine, like, I know it's going to be very meaningful for Lance Lynn and Descalso. I can't imagine, you know, the Cardinal uniform and the organization were such a big part of their lives. And now coming back, I bet, you know, they're going to really enjoy that. So I think it's going to be fun for all of us to watch this year.
Hopefully it gives us something a little bit more fun than the 2023 season for sure. But thank you so much for joining us today. It was such a pleasure to have you. A bit of an unorthodox episode, fought through some connectivity issues and everything. But yeah, it was just super great to have Trevor on here. We hope to connect with you again in the future. Again, go check out Trevor Rosenthal on Twitter. He's got an awesome feed full of great stuff. He provides good content. And then also, we are so excited to watch your playing career continue. We know wherever you land, it's going to be awesome. So yeah, just thank you so much for joining us again. We hope to have you on again sometime in the future.
Yeah, no, you guys are doing a great job. I appreciate you taking the time to reach out to me, and we'll do it again sometime. We'll keep in touch, but all the best to you guys, and I'm always available to link up whenever you guys have interest.